Thanks for coming back. My apologies for the abrupt ending
My
before.
apologies to
That's
you.
okay. We're having a blast talking with Tony Orlando. I just want to make sure I ask this one question because you had a lot of hits in the 70s, and I looked up online in Wikipedia. It says about Tie Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree that the songwriters for it first offered it to Ringo Starr, and Alan Steckler, who was at Apple Records, turned it down for Ringo. You didn't hear anything about that? I mean, you want accuracy being told about all these stories. So,
Yeah, that's news to me. I never heard that before.
okay, that's what it says online. So,
It's possible that you'll have to do an interview with Larry Brown. Well, he'll tell you that. And
okay,
that's very, very possible that they saw that for him. Yeah, that's great. When I first heard Yellow Ribbon, Larry came into Hank Medris's office. That's the guy we talked about earlier that
right.
needed to pay his rent. Now he's my producer, right? Making the Tony Montana Dawn records, how things happen, right? And Larry came up and played me Yellow Ribbon. And my answer to him was, I said, you know, Larry, I think that'd be a great song for Bobby Vinton. I said, because Bobby Vinton had hits with colors,
Yeah.
Rose on Red, Blue on Blue. I said, Yellow is in his repertoire. I said, I don't know if that's a hit for me. I didn't think it was.
Mm,
But I listened to Hank Medris. If he said it was a hit, he had golden ears. I always respected that.
yeah.
So Hank, so what I did was I said, okay, I'll record it under one condition. And Hank said, well, what is that? I said, well, Thelma and Joyce, I want them not just to be background singers. I want to build a career for them as well.
Right.
Because my goal was to do a television show. That was my goal.
Mm,
So I said, why don't you, I'll cut it if you'll give at least 2 or 3 single recordings in the Yellow Ribbon album. Would you do that? And he said, yes. I said, then I'll cut the song. But I really called Larry up and said, Larry, I can't stop singing this chorus. I know it's a hit.
mm,
But I just come off Knock Three Times not too long ago before that.
right.
And I said, it's going to sound like a novelty record again. I'm trying to build a career with these girls.
Hmm.
And I had a vision for us. And we were more, the girls and I basically in our hearts were more R&B oriented,
Right.
just my heart.
Yeah.
So when I would do a live show, there's more R&B in the show, rhythm and blues, than
Mm,
something like Yellow Ribbon. So I was trying to focus to go that way.
right.
That's why we did an Alan Toussaint song in the album called Freedom for the Stallion.
Okay.
Yeah, which was done by a lot of people, but I love that. I love that song that Toussaint wrote. So whether he played that for Ringo or not, you're gonna have to ask him. Possible. Makes sense.
All right. Or I could ask Alan Steckler, who's still around and he's in his
I mean, if
early
you think of
40s.
Yellow Submarine, you think of the Beatles, Tie Yellow Ribbon would have been a great song for Ringo Starr, really.
Hmm. I just can't hear it. I can't hear it with his voice, but
Oh, I
I'm
could hear him.
glad you did it.
Yeah.
Good done.
Oh, I could hear him really. I could. I remember Geraldo Rivera was interviewing Paul, and I think Geraldo was expecting a different answer. And he said, Paul, what do you think of this song, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree?
Mhm.
And Paul said, what do I think of it? I wish I written it.
Mm. He just said the same thing about How Deep Is Your Love. So,
And you know what's interesting? Ask Larry Brown this. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but Larry said the chord structure to How Deep Is Your Love and Yellow Ribbon are the same.
I have to go over that in my mind. Hmm. Anyway, but I'm someone who on my show, like a mantra, I always say the most important thing about a recording is the strength of the song first. Everything can build around it. And when you've got a great team like Irwin Levine here and L. Brown, they wrote so many hits for you. I wanted you to just talk briefly about how they started this whole relationship with you and how they just seem to have a golden ear for what worked for you.
Well, first of all, it's all about the lyric.
Hmm.
You know, without the lyric, it would be Da 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 da. That would be the song.
Okay.
The lyric is everything. Like Clive Davis said, whenever I got someone brings me a song for Whitney or somebody, make sure you give me the lyric sheet first.
Mm.
And Irwin Levine was a genius lyricist, like Jerry Goffin. You know, if you look out your window tonight, pulling the string with a note that's attached to my heart. What? Read how many times I saw you. I mean, he wrote movies. Gypsy Rose, say he has any, but you know, down in New Orleans in a place. I mean, he was amazing, this guy.
Right.
And so the lyrics really was the strength of those hits. The melodies were super important, don't get me wrong. But when you put a lyric like that onto a song, it's going to make people say, wait a minute, what is that? Now the whole damn bus is cheering because they can't believe they see 100 yellow ribbons around that. I mean, that was the ultimate love story. Right. She didn't put one yellow ribbon on there, baby. She put 100 yellow ribbons on there. Yeah. And that was the strength of Irwin Levine. His lyrics were unreal. So it didn't take too much thought. And remember, I come from a time when like Dionne Warwick had Burt Bacharach.
Right.
Motown had Holland Dozier and Holland.
Mm-hmm.
I had Lorena Brown. So for people who didn't write their own hits,
right,
it was good to be able be with a team that strong, right, writing for you. And it just turned out that they became the writers for Tony Orlando and Dawn hits. And I've been blessed. Now, I tell people, they think I wrote Yellow Ribbon. I say, no. Irwin Levine and Larry Brown wrote Yellow Ribbon. I was just the mailman that delivered the letter.
Yeah, but the voice, the whole production, the girls and you know, accompanying you, that's part of the package.
But thank you. But the truth is, it's all, like you say, you're a song man. Yeah. It's all about the song.
Right. Absolutely. Before we talk about the Beatles, just want to talk about Gypsy Rose. What made you go in that direction to doing the ragtime? Because like you said, you would prefer to put R&B in there, you know.
Well, when I heard Gypsy Rose and Who's in the Strawberry Patch with Sally,
right,
I said to Hank, I said, these guys sound like they're writing for Al Jolson. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting if we did an album? You know, like Tommy had an idea album, you know, I mean, right. It's like a rock opera. Mm-hmm. What if we did an album and I call the album Tony Orlando and Dawn's New Ragtime Follies? Mm-hmm. And the reason I said ragtime is because of the instrumental on Gypsy Rose was a Dixieland improvised solo. So we asked the horn section, just improvise in the horns solo a Dixieland sound. Mm-hmm. Nothing real. Yeah. That was all just like Dixieland it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So to me, that read as ragtime. Not Dixieland, but ragtime. So I use the word ragtime as the title of the concept album, so that we would go against FM radio, against the grain, counter-programming, so to speak, counter-programming to do the complete opposite so that we would stand out. So if you look at the album cover, I got the straw hat and cane, going back to the Al Jolson years. So I find out from Larry Brown years later that Irwin Levine and Larry Brown's favorite person in the world was Al Jolson. And I didn't even know that. So the word follies came from Ziegfeld Follies. Right. So that was showbiz, right? Showgirls, Vegas, showgirls to me. So by putting those two names together and counter-programming heavy metal, right, or hard rock, I thought we'd get attention.
You definitely did.
We had the TV show, which meant that my demographic could accept that
Hmm.
because I could do it visually on television.
Sure.
And that's how that was born.
Okay, I got to ask you some things about the Beatles. The first time you heard a Beatles record, do you remember it?
Say what?
The first time you heard a Beatles record, do you remember that moment and how you felt about it?
Yeah,
Which
I
one?
remember exactly. She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I was married. My ex-wife worked for Hill and Ray's Music, and she was married to the guy Fred Neil before me, who wrote "Everybody's Talking at Me."
Mhm.
I don't hear a word to say. That was Fred Neil. Was her ex-husband.
Right.
So she had incredible ears. She turned to me and she said, and my first reaction was, "Hey man, they must love the Everly Brothers." That was my first reaction. And then my second reaction was her reaction. She said to me, "But listen to the chord changes. There's a little jazz thing happening with them."
Mhm.
And I said, "You know what? You're right." And then at the end of the record, I said, "Wait a minute. This is the third song I've heard for them, and they don't do any fades. They end the song."
Mm.
You know, those of us, the record is always fading out, fading out, fading out. Not them. They wrote an ending. So those were the three first impressions of them. And then I realized as it progressed, I said to myself, this is something special, especially when they started talking. When I was in England, they were talking about Carol and Jerry, which was my life.
Right.
So when they talked about Carol and Jerry, I said, "Oh my God, they know my stuff. They know our stuff, you know."
Mm.
So, when I went to England in '72, it was the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And the Beatles were the good shoe guys. They were called the mods. So there was the mods and the rockers. The mods were anybody that looked like the Beatles with a shirt and tie, and the
Mhm.
rockers anybody looked like the Rolling Stones. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I do. It's mentioned in A Hard Day's Night.
Who is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Odd, by the way, comes from a movie called Move Over Darling with Doris Day.
Hmm.
That's where the abbreviation MOD came over. Move Over Darling.
Never knew that. All the little things you pick up here. Um, yeah, so was there any kind of, because you worked with all these great songwriting teams, and there were a lot of artists who all of a sudden, once the British invasion happened, the hits stopped, and there are people like Neil Sedaka, yeah, who found ways, Carole King, of having like the Monkees cover their music. Um, did you
That
receive
was all
that?
because of Jack Keller and Donnie Kirshner, though,
Mhm.
because Donnie Kirshner discovered the Monkees.
Right, but I'm just saying that these songwriters found a new life.
Because of Don Kirshner.
Yeah.
Don Kirshner took those songwriters, had them write for the Monkees, like
Right.
Jack Keller, who produced the first Monkees records. And so Donnie was the one that closed that up because he moved from his own company to Colpix. And so the Monkees was his first project.
Hmm.
So all the writers from his little company, like Carol and Jerry and Barry and Cynthia and Neil and Howie Greenfield, they just went along with the ride. They
Yeah.
had nothing to do with it. It was all Donnie Kirshner.
Okay. But since I say nothing's more important than the song, the reason why for so many people the Monkees catalog endures is because of who wrote those songs.
No, definitely. But it was Donnie who would literally say, "Let's shape these songs for this act." So they would write for what they heard that would be compatible with them. So the
Right.
writers were already given a destination by
Right.
Don Kirshner.
Okay. Well, can you name certain Beatles songs that for you stand out as among the best? What you find is to be your favorite?
That's almost impossible for me, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because there's nothing that they did that I ever disliked.
Hmm.
It's all in all their genres. They always outdid themselves.
Right.
one after the next,
Yeah.
after the next, after the next. The most prolific writers I've ever come across, the most incredible um, songwriting teams.
Mm,
I put George in there too.
right.
Ever, ever. They raised the bar for everybody.
Yeah.
They did. But you can't forget the guys that encouraged them. The Lieber and Stollers of the world,
Mm,
the Carolyn Jerrys of the world, the Barry and Cynthias of the world. They were the ones that shaped the Beatles on how to write and where to go. And so I was fortunate enough. Remember something? I signed with them 5 years after Heartbreak Hotel.
mm-hmm.
So if you use Heartbreak Hotel as a marker, right, Ken? It's only 5 years that I signed with Epic Records. I was the first pop artist on Epic, by the way. There was never a pop artist on Epic. And that became the home of Michael Jackson, etc. But the first pop signing they ever had was because of Donnie Kirshner, was me,
Mm,
Halfway to Paradise. That was their first top 40 pop artist to go for. Before that, they had a band called Lester Latin, which was like for sophisticated band members. And then
mm-hmm.
they had Roy Hamilton, who had gospel hits and You'll Never Walk Alone, who was Elvis's favorite singer, by the way. And Elvis was by Roy Hamilton's bedside when Roy died. If you hear Don't Let Go by Roy Hamilton, you'll hear Elvis.
Mm,
He that whistle, it's 10 o'clock. I don't let go. I don't let go. It was all. And Elvis idolized Roy Hamilton. So Chips Moman, who produced uh, um, all the hits with Willie Nelson and all those, Highwayman and so forth. And Chips Moman was at the bedside with Elvis, and he produced Elvis also when Roy died, and Elvis paid for the funeral.
wow, that's nice. Chips Moman, great producer.
That's Tony Wine's husband.
Yep. And one of my favorite singers of all time is B.J. Thomas,
Me too.
who produced amazing voice.
Amazing.
He also recorded an album with Ringo that Ringo prevented from coming out.
Yes, he did. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there you go. Have you
Well,
had
as far as the Beatles are concerned, in my opinion, modern day music all begins with them. Even though the people before them, we all named them and we know what their part is in the roots of the tree.
uh-huh.
Boy, were they the fruit.
That's a good way of looking at it. I just want to close because I know that you're pressed for time here. Um, have you had any ongoing relationship with any of the Beatles?
Not really. Well, I mean, when I see them, it's a warm. I'll give you a quick story about Paul.
Mm,
My guitar player, two brothers, the Cole brothers, eat, sleep, and you know what, the Beatles, okay? And they've been with me for 30 years. And Paul was at the MGM Grand, and it was one of the brothers' birthday. And I said, you want to go and meet Paul? So I called Paul. He said, okay, Tony, bring him on over, at the MGM Grand. So I go, it's me, my wife, the two brothers. And the guy comes out and he says, Paul's ready to see you, Tony. I said, well, let it be the brothers because they idolize Paul.
mm,
No, Paul wants to see you and one other because there's so many people back there. We're
yeah.
just twos. I said, okay, I respect that. So we go back and I bring back Tracy Cole. And I whispered into Paul's ear. I said, Paul, it's Tracy's birthday. And he just like all of us, love you.
Mm,
He goes, I've got it. He says, Tracy, my boy, I understand it's your birthday. He said, I'm going to do something Liverpoolian boys never do. And he goes over and he kisses him on his cheek. And happy birthday, and kisses Tracy on his cheek. So we take this picture with the three of us together, right? Me, Paul. Yeah. I'll send you the picture of me and Paul. So we'll tell you. All of a sudden, next day I look at Tracy's website because I figured he'd be so excited to be on his thing. He cut me out. It was just him and Paul. He cut me right out of the picture. It was funny. But yeah, Paul was very nice to him. Always nice to me. Always been wonderful to me. John, the same. all of the guys. They've been Ringo, all they've been wonderful to me, and it's been a mutual love affair.
Has Tracy ever washed his face since then?
The Witch?
Has Tracy ever washed his face since then?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, your last concert will be at Mohegan Sun. It's March the 22nd at 7:30. You can bet my family will be there. And
Oh, thank you, Ken.
you know,
Thank
you've
you. And
been,
God bless you for all the love that you share with people, not only about my show, but what you do for all of us writers and performers in the business. You do an incredible job. We're forever grateful to you.
yeah. And by the way, catch Tony's radio show on WABC, where I first heard Tony Orlando and Dawn on the radio. It all
That's right.
comes full circle anyway. And you're on the same night as legendary cousin Brucey,
Yeah.
and your
And
hours are
if you're out of town, what do they say? They say, uh, uh, go to musicradio.wabc.com. Just go to
WABCmusicradio.com.
wabcmusicradio.com, and they can
stream
get the
it.
show 10 o'clock Eastern.
okay. And I've been listening, and I love all the themes that you do.
Thank
Your
you.
interview with Debbie Boone. I heard
I
that.
had Paul Stanley on last week. It was fun.
Yep. And I love what you did on Bobby Darin too. So
Thank
keep
you.
up the great work.
Thank you,
And
man.
hopefully I'll see you on March 22nd.
God
Okay.
bless.
Thank you, Tony. And
Thank you.
thanks to everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time.